Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're standing in a hallway so still you can hear the house breathing, a thin winter draft under the door. A clock that minds its manners. And a phone glow, spilling a narrow river of light across the floorboards. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I like seeing our little constellation of night owls. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe let a fan hum in the background. And let's begin tonight's journey together. It was just after midnight when my daughter-in-law's whisper slid down the hallway like a knife wrapped in silk. I hadn't meant to listen. The house simply put her words in my hands. After she signs the house, Sable said, voice breathy with triumph, we move her into Brookside. Cheap, close. And the waiting list is a joke if you know who to tip. Applause. Then my son, Adrian, the boy I taught to tie his shoes and tell the truth, answered softly, we'll tell her the papers are routine. Mr. Calder said he'll have everything ready. We just need her signature. I stayed very still on the other side of my bedroom door. When you're my age, you learn that stillness is camouflage. The floor has its own weather system and will rat you out if you breathe wrong. My hand found the edge of the dresser and held on until the room remembered which way was up. I could picture Brookside brown linoleum, a smell of bleach and boiled carrots, a TV mounted high enough to keep conversation from forming. I visited friends there and brought cookies that tasted like apologies. They moved back to logistics tomorrow morning. A surprise brunch. A ride to Mr. Calder's office so she doesn't have to navigate downtown. The deed transfer to make taxes simpler. A temporary power of attorney just while she rests. Their vocabulary had learned all the right terms. Quirky sidebar voices travel farther at night when the air cools and settles. Sound bends toward the ground, turning whispers into tourists that visit rooms they weren't invited to. It isn't nosiness when physics delivers the mail. I let them finish planning my gratitude. When Adrian's footsteps crossed the hall toward the guest room, I eased into bed and practiced the slow breath a nurse taught me during the hard winter in for 4, out for 6, as if the air were stitching a seam that refused to close. My late husband, Robert, used to call me his lighthouse. Last night, I realized lighthouses don't argue with waves, they endure them, name them, and mark the rocks. I would be a lighthouse again by morning. At 7. The kitchen put on its daytime voice, the kettle cleared its throat. The toaster made its small, honest thunder. And Sable rehearsed delight like it was aerobic exercise. Surprise, she sang, laying out a plate of muffins that had surely been purchased in a sprint. Adrian hugged me, light and quick like you touch a stove to see if it's hot. Mom, he said, today we'll swing by Mr. Calder's after we eat, purely to reduce paperwork. You'll feel so much lighter. I do love feeling lighter, I said, arranging my face into the kind of smile that lets other people miscalculate you. And I adore paperwork. Light joke 1 in this kitchen. Sarcasm wears pearls. Sable laughed too loudly and poured orange juice the way people pour when they're trying to get to the next sentence alive. I wore my good wool and my better calm in the bathroom. I looked at my reflection and addressed the woman there like an old friend who's about to do something complicated. We'll be polite, I told her. We'll be slow. And we won't sign anything that can't survive sunlight. Elder wisdom reflection when someone rushes you toward a pen. Substitute a question for your signature. A real helper slows down. A thief speeds up. If they won't let you take documents home just to read, they are not bringing you help. They are bringing their needs. We drove in Sable's car, which smelled like expensive vanilla and impatience. She chatted about streamlining estates while Adrian described Brookside as a place with activities. The way one might describe purgatory as well organized. I looked at the winter trees passing and thought of the season Robert and I wrote our wills on the back porch with soup steaming between us. He'd insisted on the life estate clause, so you can stay in the house as long as you like. No matter who gets clever, and I'd rolled my eyes and signed, because marriage is quicksand without a little humility. I made a note to bless that man later, properly. Mr. Calder's office lived above a storefront that sold suitcases and regrets. He had the haircut of a man who trusts only outlined hairlines. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, extending a hand that felt like a receipt. "We'll only need a moment. Simple transfer to help your children manage taxes and maintenance. Very common. Then a small temporary power of attorney so the family can sign on your behalf while you rest." His smile landed between sympathy and keyboard shortcut. "Lovely," I said, reading the top page without moving my lips. "May I have a copy of everything?" He blinked. Of course. We can do that after." "I'm sure you can," I said gently. "But I prefer before." Light joke too in my era. Foreplay was called reading. He passed me the stack. Deed at the top grantor me. Grantee Forrester Family Trust. A name with the personality of beige, the temporary POA below. Paragraphs plump with verbs that ask to be trusted manage. Convey, encumber. I set the tip of my pen on the paper like a bird considering a wire and did not press down. "What's the duration of temporary?" I asked. 90 days, he said. "Renewable." "Renewable the way weeds are renewable," I murmured, and he pretended not to hear. I looked up at the framed diploma on his wall, then back at Adrian, whose eyes were full of good intentions, waterlogged by somebody else's plan. "Calder," I said, voice soft as fresh bread. "What is the statutory standard for undue influence in this state?" Academic phrase of the day, undue influence doctrine. The public argument that a transaction can be voided if a stronger party uses trust, dependency, or pressure to overcome the free will of a vulnerable person. Courts look for opportunity, motive, and the result that profits the influencer. In kitchens, we look for the new habit of calling you confused when you disagree. Calder cleared his throat. "It's nuanced. Everything worth saving is," I said. "I'll be taking these home to read if the offer survives sunlight. I'll return with counsel." Adrian's jaw tightened. Sable's hand fluttered like a trapped bird. "It's really best to sign now," she said. "Schedules?" "Oh, I love schedules," I answered. "Standing? Mine says T." Light joke 3 for my own courage. Besides, my favorite notary is a person who isn't standing in this room. On the way back, Sable tried to sell me fear like a subscription service. "If you don't do this soon, taxes will eat the house. Let them nibble," I said. The house bites back. Adrian stared into the middle distance where guilt hides its coat. I wanted to put my hand on his cheek and remind him of the boy who cried when he cracked my teapot and confessed before I asked. Love is a muscle. It aches when it lifts too much. At home, I put the papers on the kitchen table and called my sister. Ruth, who lives 2 towns over and keeps a filing cabinet like a preacher keeps psalms. I heard enough. She said, after I read 3 sentences, "I'll be there by noon." While I waited, I made tea and wrote 3 columns in my notebook. Questions, clauses, witnesses, under questions. What happens to my right to live here? Why is the trust named after them, not me? Who benefits if I get sleepy under clauses? Life estate, homestead protection, Robert's belt and suspenders habit, under witnesses. Alma, next door, eagle eyes. Pastor Jim, good memory. My own calendar, indicting. I poured tea and opened the kitchen window, a finger width, to let the cold teach me precision. The house listened the way old houses do when they recognize a crisis as a cousin to all the others they've survived. We're all right, I told the cabinets, because they've held more secrets than any lawyer in this county. We're going to be all right. Ruth arrived with her coat still arguing with the wind and hugged me like a person steadying a ladder. We read. We circled verbs, we Googled Brookside, and found the review that said, "Staff do their best with what they're given," which is politely devastating. Ruth sniffed. "They don't intend you well," she said. "Plain as a label. We will intend you better." That evening, I cooked for myself in a deliberate way 1 onion, 2 carrots. Time measured by the soft cadence of a wooden spoon, I sent Sable and Adrian a kind text. "Thank you for helping me think about the future. I'll be reviewing the documents with counsel. Let's plan dinner tomorrow. I'm making pot roast." The word dinner is a leash that shortens lies. "Of course." Sable replied instantly. "We love your roast," Adrian typed. "Whatever you need, Mom," which is semantically perfect and morally unfinished. Before bed, I slid Robert's old file box from the hall closet and laid it open like a book we'd both been reading for 27 years. Tabs, receipts, that man could label a thunderstorm, in the middle. A folder I'd missed after the funeral, deed, life, estate, witness copies. I didn't cry, I laughed. That little astonished laugh that sounds like a person finding her car keys where her hand already was. I kissed my finger and pressed it to his name. Then I wrote the last sentence of the day in my notebook, large enough to be legible at 3 a.m. I'm not signing away the roof I built just so somebody else can feel tall under it. Ruth and I sat with the folder spread between us like a calm map. The life estate deed had Robert's tidy underlines and 2 neat highlighter stars beside the clause that mattered. I keep the right to live here until I choose otherwise, or the house decides it's had enough of me, whichever comes later. He joked. And I hear him now, chuckling from the practical afterlife. Beneath that, a second page. Transfer of any interest requires consent of life tenant and a neutral third-party witness, not related by blood or marriage. Robert had added, in pencil, for the day our kindness gets cornered. Ruth poured tea and tapped the margin. "That's the lantern," she said. "You don't need to swing it. You just set it where eyes can't pretend they didn't see." We made a list of to-dos that wouldn't scare the kettle call a proper elder law attorney. Copy everything. Tell Alma next door the short version, and schedule dinner as agreed pot roast on the table. My spine in the chair, and the deed like a guest who doesn't talk but keeps everyone honest. I started with Alma. She appeared on the porch in a sweater that could lecture February, when I told her I might need a witness with good shoes and better ears. She raised her broom like a baton. "I sweep, I watch, I remember," she said. "It's my daily exercise." She did not ask for gossip, she accepted a job description. The house seemed to approve. The hinge sighed its agreeable sigh. Quirky sidebar signatures are surprisingly individual, even when you think you're being generic. Graphologists can't tell your soul from your loops, but they can spot tremor patterns. Speed and pressure. Scans catch that, to a slow. Hesitant pen leaves darker pools of ink at corners, while a rushed, coached signature skates like a nervous bird. We practiced mine slow, steady, like I was signing for every version of me that needed this roof. By noon, I had an appointment with an elder law attorney named Hannah Doyle, whose receptionist had the voice of a person who files storms alphabetically. "Bring everything," she said. "We like papers that believe in themselves." Ruth and I packed the life estate deed, our notes, Mr. Calder's stack, and a small comfort ginger candies for the waiting room, because even justice likes a mint. Hannah's office smelled like cedar and photocopiers. She listened the way paper hopes to be read, starting with the life estate, then the Forrester Family Trust, then the temporary power of attorney that wanted to be permanent when no one was looking. You don't sign anything, she said. And if they show up with a mobile notary, you ask for their journal, their commission number, and their last 3 notarizations. People who intend you well never mind daylight. She photocopied Robert's double consent clause and grinned at his pencil note. Your husband anticipated a rainy day, she said. We'll bring umbrellas. Then she gave me 3 sentences for dinner. I have a life estate. Any transfer requires my consent and a neutral witness. I will not sign today. Counsel will contact you tomorrow. She wrote them on a card in her calm hand and slid it to me like a blessing disguised as stationery. Academic phrase of the day, testamentary capacity, the public argument that a person must understand at the time of signing what property they have, who their natural beneficiaries are, and what the document does. It's not a memory test, it's a clarity test. Predators try to win by casting fog. The counterspell is simple as whether name the house. Name your people. Name what each paper would change aloud, with a witness, and preferably with soup cooling on the table so no one forgets people eat here. On our way out, Hannah added a shield I hadn't known to ask for a springing medical power of attorney, naming Ruth as agent only if 2 physicians say I can't decide. You choose your future deciders now, she said. So nobody auditions for the role uninvited. We sign that one blue ink, slow. With Ruth squeezing my elbow after each page like she was clicking a seatbelt I'd earned. The afternoon did its practical errands while my heart practiced being steady. I walked to the copy shop and asked for 3 sets, 1 for me, 1 for Hannah, 1 for the cousin who texts me recipes and frequent reminders that my roast deserves awards. She also keeps secrets competent. The clerk slid the warm stacks across the counter and said, "These look important," in the reverent tone of a person who has watched more divorces and reconciliations pass through his machine than any counselor in town. "They are," I said. "They're my roof." Elder wisdom reflection: do not argue with people who want your pen. Argue with paper with dates and clauses and stamps, because paper argues back without shouting. You can love your son and disbelieve his plan. You can feed your daughter-in-law and refuse her signature script. 2 things can be true, but only one gets the ink. At 4. I did a quiet lap of the rooms, not as a farewell tour, but as a roll call. Bedroom present, Robert's chair present, window latch that sticks when it rains present, and unrepentant. I told each room, privately, that it remained mine until further notice, and that notice would not come from a whisper after midnight. The house made its little settling noises, the old bone pops that reassure me we're aging together with a kind of dignity. Dinner started itself: onions, carrots, potatoes, the slow surrender of beef to thyme and salt. Sable texted, "Can we move it up to 6? Mr. Calder is leaving town tomorrow. It would help to sign tonight." I stirred the pot and answered, 6 is fine. No signing tonight. Dinner only. She sent back a thumbs up that read, to my eye, like teeth. Ruth set the table like a treaty: 2 spoons of kindness, 1 knife of clarity. Plates placed where chairs could exit easily. Alma knocked and stepped in with a small bouquet for center gravity. She said, "Also, my broom and I will be outside at 6:45, entirely coincidentally." We smiled into our napkins. Light joke 1. Your broom's union is really racking up overtime. They arrived on a gust of perfume and caution. Adrian kissed my cheek. Sable put wine on the table the way people put down a chess piece in a timed game. We ate. I asked about work, weather, and the price of eggs like a normal woman planning a normal Wednesday. When the plates were pushed back and the fork music ended, Sable slid a manila envelope from her bag. "So," she said brightly, "Mr. Calder was kind enough to..." I set my palm lightly on the envelope as if it were a small hummingbird. Not tonight, I said, soft as lint. I have a life estate. Any transfer requires my consent and a neutral witness not related to any of us. I will not sign today. Counsel will contact you tomorrow. I did not look at my cue card. I looked at my son. Silence sat down. The clock cleared its throat. Sable smiled, brightened, dimmed, tried again. Of course, she said. Just thought we'd be efficient. Efficiency is a fine servant, I said, and a poor host. Light joke, too. The kettle chuffed in approval. Adrian's eyes flicked to the envelope as if it might hatch. Mom, he began, and the word laid its head on the table between us, tired and hungry. We're trying to help. The house is big. The taxes are I've paid every bill on time, I said gently. And when I can't, I will sell this tea kettle before I sell my consent. He swallowed. People are whispering you're forgetful. People are whispering to cover their own remembering, I said. Tonight, we are using nouns deed, clause, witness. Academic addendum. Translated to kitchen if someone tells you you're confused every time you disagree. They are not diagnosing, they are rehearsing. Sable tried for sympathy's dress rehearsal. Brookside has activities, she offered. Bingo. Crafts. I own a garden, I said. It crafts me. Light joke 3. Barely sugared. Ruth refilled the water and set the pitcher down with the pleasant authority of a gavel. I opened Robert's folder and slid out the copy of the life estate deed with the double consent clause, placing it beside the wine. This is the paper, I said. It is older than your plan and kinder than your vocabulary. You will take your envelope home. You will not bring a notary into my kitchen. You will call Hannah Doyle tomorrow if you wish to discuss anything at all. And you will not use the word confused, because my brain, while not a sprinter, can still outrun a hustle. Adrian nodded once. The way men do when the fight drained out and the boy is listening again. Sable looked at the clause like it had betrayed her personally. We thought this would be easier, she whispered. Which was the truest sentence she gave me that night. You're right, I said. Easier is how people get hurt. They left with leftovers because I was raised right. On the porch. Alma's broom made a gentle shh that sounded like applause wearing slippers. After the dishes, Ruth and I labeled 2 new folders. Calder documents, copies, and dinner notes, witnesses. I wrote Hannah's name on an index card and stuck it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a lighthouse. Because Robert was right, lighthouses don't argue. They just keep the beam steady until the ship decides if it loves rocks or tomorrow more. Before bed, I walked the hall slowly and spoke my name aloud, the way you do after a close call in a crowd. Then I wrote one last line for the 3 a.m. version of me who wakes to check if the door is still the door. The pen slept here tonight. It wakes with me tomorrow. Morning unspooled like a clean ribbon. I woke before the alarm and let myself listen to the small civics of the house, the radiator casting votes for warmth. The kettle making its opening statement. Ruth slept on the pullout with the dignity of a visiting general. Alma's broom thumped once on the front walk. Our daily oath. At 9 sharp, Hannah called. I've drafted 2 letters, she said. Voice cedar steady. One to Mr. Calder, instructing a hard pause. One to your son and daughter-in-law, offering a meeting in my office with neutral witness if they still believe signatures should move. I pictured the letter wearing a sensible coat and knocking politely on nonsense. We drove to Hannah's suite with the folder buckled in like a grandchild. She greeted us with tea and nouns. Here's today, she said, sliding a plan across the table. We record a brief capacity memo, your words. Not mine naming your property, the people you love, and the effect of any transfer. We file a notice of life estate in the county index so no one forgets the clause. We notify Brookside that any placement decisions must come through council. and we request Mr. Calder's engagement letter and conflict check." She smiled in a way that told me she enjoys watching slippery things try to stand on paper. The capacity memo was almost tender, into her small recorder. I said my name and the house address the way you recite a prayer that pays the mortgage. I named my people Ruth, faithful as a coat on a windy day; Alma, witness with a broom; Adrian, my only son, currently misled but not irredeemable; Sable, married in weather system that does not get to run the forecast. I read the clause aloud, consent of life tenant and neutral third party, and then summarized Mr. Calder's stack without adjectives. "I do not consent," I finished. "And I am not confused, I am simply awake." Hannah stopped the recorder and nodded. "Courts," she said, "like voices that sit down in a chair. Quirky sidebar in some counties. The old grantor-at-grantee index still lives in huge leather-bound books, and clerks turn the pages with fingertips dusted in rosin like violinists. The rosin keeps paper from skipping past the truth. I watched a clerk named Jean do it that afternoon, and for the rest of the day, my brain smelled faintly of pine and accuracy. We filed the notice. Jean stamped it with a thunk you could feel in your ribs and mailed Hannah's letter certified. Because green postcards returning to your mailbox are little trophies that say someone had to sign in daylight on our way out. My phone buzzed. "Adrian, Mom, we got your lawyer's letter. Can we please talk tonight without all this? Without all this meant without witnesses, without paper, without the broom." I texted back, "At Hannah's. Tomorrow at 11 with a neutral present. My kitchen is for soup." He started to type, then stopped. I set the phone face down as if it were a small, excitable pet. At home. I seasoned a pot of beans with an optimism I could defend. Ruth reviewed the to-do list and added a star beside neighbor brief. We took 2 bowls next door and sat with Alma at her little table while she wrote our agreed sentence in her tidy, retired teacher hand on date. After dinner, I observed Sable produce an envelope. I heard Miss Whitmore refuse to sign and cite a life estate clause requiring a neutral witness. She signed and dated it. "If they say I'm nosy," she said, "tell them I have a license. Light Joke 1, issued by the Department of Sanity, Broom Division." We laughed the laugh of women who have earned their municipal humor. Academic phrase of the day: elder abuse presumption. There's a public policy debate about whether certain transactions should be presumed invalid when there's a confidential relationship and a suspicious benefit. Some states have strong presumptions that shift the burden to the would-be beneficiary. Others demand the elder prove undue influence. Advocates argue the presumption protects the vulnerable. Critics worry it overcorrects and chills legitimate caregiving. Hannah sketched the debate on a legal pad, then circled our state's modest version. "Not perfect," she said, "but courts have weathered storms with worse umbrellas." Late afternoon delivered an email from Mr. Calder that smelled like lemon and liability. He attached his engagement letter thin as a napkin and swore he intended only comfort. Hannah replied with a paragraph that began, "Counsel is now involved and ended your conflict log. Please." I imagined him turning to his wall of framed diplomas to see if any awarded bravery. Just before dusk, Sable showed up on my porch alone, coat belted like a strategy. "Can we talk?" she asked, eyes glossy with either emotion or good product. I opened the storm door, but not the wood one. "Tomorrow," I said, gentler than a hinge, "at Hannah's office." She glanced at the door between us as if it were an insult. "We're family," she said. "Family talks in kitchens. Family protects kitchens," I answered, "and follows calendars." She swallowed something sharp. "People are saying we are not doing rumors," I said. "We are doing receipts." She rolled her eyes so hard the porch light dimmed. "You've made this adversarial." "No," I said. I've made it documented. She pivoted credit where due to sympathy. We love you. I like love that arrives with lasagna, I said. Bring one tomorrow if you like. Light joke too? She did not clap. She left with a shrug you could hear. Elder wisdom reflection. There's a difference between privacy and secrecy. Privacy is a door you close because you deserve rest. Secrecy is a door someone else closes so they can rearrange the furniture. Choose your doors. Leave a window open for witnesses. Ruth and I spent the evening doing the soft chores due process enjoys. We labeled flash drives, blue capacity memo, green deed clause, red Calder emails, charged our phones, and ironed the good napkins because I refused to face conflict with wrinkled linen. I wrote tomorrow's sentence on an index card in large letters. I do not consent to transfer. I retain my life estate. Counsel present. I tucked it into my purse like a passport. At 9, Adrian called. I let it ring twice, then answered with my quiet voice. Mom, he said, sounding like the boy who once brought me a jar of lightning bugs and believed light could be collected without consequence. I didn't want this. Then don't want it tomorrow, I said. Come to Hannah's. Bring Sable, bring whatever Mr. Calder printed. If you love me more than paperwork, you'll be fine. He was silent so long I could hear his breath negotiate. Okay, he said finally. Okay. I pictured him sitting in the dark with a pen that had lost its nerve. Quirky fact. For courage, the little green certified mail card you sign at the post office is officially called PS Form 3811. Clerks sometimes call it the receipt that receipts, which confers upon it a personality I admire. I pressed ours flat under the dictionary, and for a moment all those words felt heavier with friendship. We met the night without dramatics. I tucked the deed under the bread box because the bread box understands stewardship. I put the kettle on and set 2 mugs beside it. Sugar in one, because at 3 a.m., sweetness forgets where it lives. I opened Robert's file, kissed my fingertips, and pressed them again to his pencil note for the day our kindness gets cornered. Light joke 3. Whispered up toward the ceiling. You win, you old belt and suspenders show-off. Sleep came like a polite guest, later than invited, but easy to host. I dreamed of lighthouses that didn't scold, only leaned their beams across water until boats remembered their names. Morning arrived with crisp edges. Ruth's coat learned its place on the hook. I wore my calm wool and shoes that knew courthouse carpets at the door. Alma raised her broom in salute. Beam steady, she said. Broom ready. We walked out into weather that minded its own business and got in the car with the folder buckled in, Hannah's address in my head, and a small, fierce piece under my sternum. We had not raised our voices. We had raised our standards. Tomorrow would make its arguments. Today, we would make ours softly, publicly, with a witness, a clause, and a pen that would write only what my future could live with. Hannah's conference room had the calm of a library that had learned to litigate soft carpet, a clock that minded punctuation, a tray with water that didn't try to be fancy. Ruth sat to my left, spine dignified. A paralegal named Joel occupied the witness chair with a legal pad and the expression of a metronome. At 10:58, the hinge offered a polite cough, and in came Adrian and Sable, followed by Mr. Calder, whose briefcase looked heavy with assumptions. Hannah rose, shook hands, and introduced the room the way a good host introduces weather. I'm counsel for Miss Whitmore. Joel will be our neutral witness for purposes of today's discussion. This meeting is recorded for accuracy. She slid a small recorder forward until it faced the middle of the table like a modest guest of honor. Calder cleared his throat, already in closing argument mode. We're simply here to help this family streamline. The transfer is routine. The temporary power of attorney. Hannah held up a page as if stopping traffic with a crossing guard's paddle. We'll proceed by order, she said pleasantly. First, Miss Whitmore's life estate, already recorded. She placed a certified copy on the table, the clerk's stamp gleaming like a quiet lighthouse. Second, the double consent clause requiring a neutral third-party witness not related by blood or marriage. That requirement controls any attempt at transfer. She tapped the margin where Robert's pencil note lived. Third, your engagement letter and conflict check. Calder produced a slim page. Hannah read it once, eyes laughing without moving. Mr. Calder, your letter identifies your client as the family, which is not a person. She slid it back with 2 fingers. You cannot represent all parties with divergent interests. Who is your client? Sable jumped first. Us, she said. Bright but brittle. He's helping us help her. Hannah's smile tucked itself in. So you do not represent Miss Whitmore? Not at the moment, Calder said. Then you will not present her with documents, Hannah said. Nor will you invite signatures today. Light joke 1, gentle as steam. We're keeping pens on a leash. Adrian's mouth opened with the bravery of a man stepping onto thin ice. Mom, he said, voice younger at the edges. We thought this would be simpler. I kept my cadence like a lullaby. Simple isn't the same as safe, I said. And safe isn't the same as yours. He swallowed. We were worried. I nodded once. Worry is welcome here. Control is not. Hannah proceeded. We have concerns about undue influence, she said, naming the doctrine out loud so the heir could memorize it, including opportunity, motive, and a result that profits the influencer, notably the proposed transfer to a trust not controlled by my client, and a POA with temporary printed in a renewable font. Calder tried a genial shrug. Temporary is common, so are locks, Hannah said, and we prefer those. Quirky, sidebar, blue ink in signatures isn't a superstition. It helps distinguish original documents from black ink photocopies in a clerk's stack. Courts and banks like the contrast. Scanners like the truth. Hannah's pens were all blue, capped neatly like small. Cooperative soldiers, mine matched. Because sometimes solidarity is a color. Joel, our neutral witness, read a short statement for the record identifying himself, the time, and the fact that no papers are being signed. He did it with the benevolence of a person who enjoys commas exactly where they belong. Sable exhaled through her nose, a sound like a zipper stuck on a dress that almost fits. Can we at least review the draft trust? She asked. Of course, Hannah said. We love drafts. They show us where the weather was heading. Calder slid a packet across, the title, The Forrester Family Trust. The trustee Sable, with Adrian as successor. Beneficiary descriptions vague as fog. Revocation rights written in a dialect of ambition. Hannah turned pages with polite wrists. Curious, she murmured. No schedule of assets. No paragraph preserving Miss Whitmore's possessory rights. No cap on agents' fees. She placed a yellow flag, and here a clause allowing the trustee to resign and appoint a successor without court oversight. That succession clause is, how to put it, optimistic. Academic phrase of the day, conflict of interest in law. The duty to avoid representing parties whose interests materially limit your loyalty to each. In families. It's the obligation to notice when your help helps your bank account first. Hannah explained it in 2 sentences fit for a kitchen. You can't be the person driving the car and the person checking whether the driver is safe. Pick a seat. Calder's ears reddened by 1 courtroom shade. Adrian stared at the table as if truth might be printed in the grain. We thought taxes. He faltered. Hannah was kind to the part of him that wanted a bridge. Homestead exemptions exist for a reason, she said. If taxes bite, we trim elsewhere. We do not amputate the roof to save the porch. Sable shifted strategies. She's been forgetful, she said, trying to credentialize concern. Hannah pressed play on the capacity memo I'd recorded yesterday. My voice filled the room, my name, the address, the clause, the effect, the refusal. It did not sound heroic. It sounded like a person reading the back of her own hand. Sable's cheeks cooled by a temperature you could feel from across the table. Hannah set down the recorder. This meeting has a narrow purpose. Here's our proposal. You withdraw the transfer package. You send Miss Whitmore any document you wish her to consider, in advance, for review in this office. You will not bring a notary to her home. You will not use the word confused as if it were evidence. If you do, we'll need to consider protective orders and a bar complaint regarding pre-filled acknowledgments. She smiled like a librarian returning an overdue threat. Shall we keep this in the library? Light joke 2. To let air back in, Ruth leaned toward me and whispered, I'm tempted to shelve them under F. For fantasy, I whispered back, or N for not today. Joel's mouth may have twitched a clerical miracle. Sable tried one last door. We can list a neutral witness, she said quickly. My friend is a notary. Hannah's head tilted, gentle, inexorable. Neutral means not related by blood or marriage and without a stake in the outcome, she said. Also, not someone who pre-fills journals to streamline. Calder glanced at the table as if the wood might patent silence. Elder wisdom reflection. If someone insists on speed, ask them to say what they're afraid will be seen when you slow down. Real helpers name the same thing you name understanding. Hustlers name a schedule. The fastest way to find out which is in the room is to reach for the brakes. We paused long enough for the clock to click its minute. Then Adrian surprised me. I don't want to fight, he said, voice sanded. Humble's first sentence, we'll stop. If Mom needs help, we'll bring soup. No more envelopes. He put a hand over the packet like a man extinguishing a small fire he started. Sable looked at him, then at me, appraisal, frustration. Something like grief for the plan that had promised her ease. Fine, she said flatly. We'll bring soup. She made the word soup sound like an offense. I like lentil, I said, and meant the détente. Hannah memorialized it. I'll send a confirming email, she said. No further contact about transfers unless through counsel. If you encounter a genuine need, we are not monsters, call us. We can discuss limited, audited tools that respect a life estate. She used audited the way gardeners use trellis. Quirky fact, legal pads owe their yellow to a 19th century stationer who stitched scraps into pads and dyed them so lawyers could distinguish the second-class paper from crisp white. Legend says the margin line, the red rule, was added so attorneys had a gutter for notes and judges had a place to sigh. Joel's pad had both yellow that forgave erasures, a red rule that welcomed small, satisfying verdicts. We stood. Calder offered his hand. Hannah took it for the sake of the hallway. Sable gathered the packet with the tenderness of a person packing away a dress she wouldn't wear again. Adrian looked at me in a way I understood from when he was 7 and brought me a broken toy with a confession I didn't mean to. I wanted to see how it worked. I touched his shoulder. Let's learn how kindness works, I said. It has fewer screws. Back home. Alma's broom drew a single line down the walk, like the underline a teacher gives the correct answer. We debriefed with bowls of beans and satisfied cutlery. Hannah's email arrived within the hour. The subject line, a lullaby, Whitmore Life Estate confirmed, no transfers absent counsel. I printed 2 copies, one for the fridge, one for the folder, and put a blue checkmark in the corner because ceremony is the body's way of believing effort. Light joke 3. After lunch variety, I labeled a new jar on the shelf in Robert's old hand pens on leash and dropped in 3 caps. Ruth rolled her eyes fondly. "You're impossible, traditionally," I said. Late afternoon brought a small act of mercy from the county Jean at indexing, emailed a scan of our recorded notice with filed, stamped in the precise place where doubt likes to sit. I forwarded it to Hannah and, because I am a petty archivist, to myself with the subject line roof. Retained. I walked the rooms again, not as roll call, but as Thanksgiving. The door that had been asked to betray me had learned new manners. The windows that favor east held winter's shy light like glass, performing forgiveness. I sat in Robert's chair and wrote in my notebook the sentence that would let me sleep. We did not sign. We set terms. We did not shout. We sided. Under that, smaller, for the version of me who wakes to check for storms. The lighthouse is working. The boats can choose. The day after Hannah's meeting, the house behaved like a veteran after a small war quiet. Methodical. Grateful to discover that walking to the kettle did not require armor. I wrote 3 lines on a sticky note and tucked it under the sugar jar where my hands would meet it by accident. No signatures at my table. Soup is welcome. Questions are currency. I wanted the reminder to be domestic, not militant. The point isn't to live like a courtroom. It's to keep a home from becoming one. By noon, rumors arrived wearing homemade shoes. Alma heard concern at the market people repeating that I was slipping, that I needed supervision, that a lovely facility had bingo on Thursdays. Concern is a social currency. Spend it too freely, and it buys you power over someone else's afternoon. I thanked Alma for the transcript and texted a single sentence to the family thread where truth goes to audition health update. I choose to live at home under a recorded life estate. Counsel is engaged. Soup remains the appropriate language. Sable hearted the message, which read like compliance with punctuation. Ruth and I decided to walk the rumor into daylight. We visited Brookside with open eyes, not to shame it, but to let facts meet oxygen. A receptionist with the stamina of a saint handed us a brochure that did not lie and a list of activities that tried. We toured a hallway that smelled like chlorine and courage. A nurse brushed a resident's hair with real gentleness. There were bright rooms and dim corners. It was neither villain nor haven. It was a machine that runs on staffing ratios and grief. I left the building thinking of all the daughters who arrive with too few options and of how criminal it is when a perfectly good roof is traded for efficiency. Elder wisdom reflection. Don't confuse. I don't want this for me with no one should have this. Mercy means leaving space for what saves other people, even when it doesn't fit your life. Draw your boundary kindly, in ink, with a margin wide enough to hold someone else's map.
Hannah, tireless Baz, librarian of consequence, sent an email marked Calder withdrawal. He'd agreed to step back pending clarification of client. The phrase made me think of binoculars. I prefer it when lawyers speak like people who keep groceries in a fridge. She also suggested we formalize finances like a stubborn garden-raised beds, labeled rows, clear borders. We added fraud alerts to my credit, a daily balance text to a dusty flip phone that cannot download anyone's idea of urgency, and a simple spending plan even a board auditor would applaud. Trust, then verify, then rest. Hannah wrote, repeat.
At 4. A text from Adrian. We'd like to come by tonight with soup. The old part of me, the world's most forgiving muscle, wanted to type yes without conditions. I set the phone down, breathed the slow count that patches frayed thoughts, then replied, come at 7. We eat, we talk facts, no folders. He answered with a thumbs up that, for the first time all week, didn't feel like teeth. They arrived with lentil soup and caution. Sable's face did its new thing, brightness dimmed half a stop. Eyes measuring what they could still rearrange. I set bowls, spoons, and the recorder that lives in my apron pocket now. Not because I plan to prosecute every dinner, but because I plan to remember them accurately. This is a conversation, I said, not crossfire. We will ask questions with dates attached. Adrian began, voice careful. We didn't mean harm. Harm doesn't require intention, I said gently. It requires effects. Let's list those. I tapped my notebook. 1, a pre-filled POA appeared in my kitchen. 2, a trust draft named you as trustee of a house I bought, lived in, and intend to exit only when the house and I agree. 3, the word confused tried to earn influence points. 4, a lawyer couldn't name his client. 5, Brookside's phone number was stored in your favorites. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry, he said. Small and honest. I panicked about money and time. We can live with the apology, I said. But we'll live with receipts first. Academic phrase of the day, reactive devaluation. The public argument that people discount proposals simply because they come from the other side, in families. It can turn any sentence from the wrong mouth into noise. Yesterday, when Hannah said, no transfer, you bristled. When I said, soup is the language, you heard it. Same idea, protect the house, different mouth. We name this not to scold, but so we can notice when our ears are picking teams instead of ideas. Sable raised her chin. You have to admit this house is a lot. Yes, I said. And it's also mine. She tried another door. What about maintenance? I have a contractor. A list and a budget, I said, sliding the paper across as if it were salt. I will ask for help when help is help, not custody. Ruth poured more soup. The room remembered its job. Quirky sidebar, most color laser printers lay down a barely visible constellation of yellow dots on each page, micro-printed timestamps and serial numbers that help trace forgeries. It's called printer steganography. If paper had freckles, this would be them. I thought about it while I looked at Mr. Calder's drafts. Even the page carried a quiet confession in the right light. Secrets shed pollen. We worked through a list of boring errands that saved lives. Adrian called the utility companies and removed his name from helpful access. Sable texted, we'll deactivate Brookside's pre-admission. I added their small, measurable acts to the done column because fairness is a muscle, too. We agreed on bi-weekly dinners with rules, no surprise paperwork, no arranging my calendar without me, no sentences that begin with people are saying. If anyone slips, the penalty is dish duty and reading the life estate clause aloud until it goes back in the drawer, smiling. Light joke 1, I told them I'd print the clause on tea towels. Absorbent and legally binding, Adrian laughed, for real. The sound he made when he was 10 and figured out cursive G's. Sable smiled without showing teeth. Progress is often millimeters. After they left, the house exhaled, as houses do when the door remembers to latch. Alma's broom made one decisive sweep like a period at the end of a paragraph that had overrun the line. I texted Hannah our soup accords, and she replied with a thumbs up wrapped in a sentence, remember, reconciliation is not a signature. Keep pens on leash. I labeled a jar accordingly. Light joke 2 pens, heal. The next morning delivered a small avalanche of practical mercy. The county clerk emailed confirmation that the notice of life estate indexed clean under my name. The tax office confirmed my homestead exemption remained untouched. My bank's fraud alert sang a little chime, strictly because a test payment correctly failed. I pinned the confirmations to a cork board titled Roof, which is my pet name for autonomy. At 10, Pastor Jim stopped by with cinnamon bread and a soft question. Do you want me to say anything from the pulpit, he asked, about gossip that dresses as concern? I shook my head. We'll let the quieter witnesses work the recorded notice. The empty chair where a notary did not sit. The soup calendar. He nodded. I can preach on the virtue of slow. Please do, I said, and meant it as a civic request. By afternoon,
The rumor had lost some appetite. People prefer spectacles to receipts. That's fine with me. Receipts are for kitchens, courts, and 3 a.m. when your mind asks to see the math again. I spend the late hours pruning my contact list, moving a few names from any time to when I have extra, and to from a number that doesn't follow me around. Compassion does not require being reachable by people who mistake access for love. Elder wisdom. Postscript. Reconciliation is dessert, not dinner. Eat your proteins first. Boundaries. Documents. Routines. So sweetness doesn't make you dizzy. We'll have dessert, maybe often. But the plate holds because something sturdier went down first. That evening, I wrote an invitation to something better Sunday. 4 p.m. tea and estate literacy for neighbors and friends. We'll read life estate clauses out loud like poems. We'll talk about notaries who keep bound journals. About springing POAs you choose while your hands are steady. About how to label a folder so your children never mistake your privacy for permission. We'll put cinnamon in the tea so the room remembers kindness is part of the homework. Light joke 3. I'm thinking of calling it Soup and Clauses. Ruth says the title guarantees attendance from both lawyers and hungry people. I say that's the coalition that built every good town I've ever lived in. Before sleep, I opened Robert's file and moved a copy of the life estate deed to a new section labeled Lanterns, a place for papers that throw light instead of shade. I wrote a last line for the hour when memory likes to test locks. We are not proving anything to rumors. We are practicing ownership with receipts. The radiator ticked its approval. The door, dear student, stayed closed with exactly the right amount of confidence. Outside. Winter practiced being less opinionated. Inside. The pen in its jar remembered who gives it work and who does not. Sunday arrived with the kind of winter light that behaves clean, pale, almost domestic. I put cinnamon sticks in the teapot so the room would remember kindness while we discussed paperwork. And I taped a sign to the door in my neatest Sunday school hand, Soup and Clauses. 4 to 5 p.m. Bring questions, leave with receipts. Ruth arranged chairs in a semicircle that looked more like conversation than courtroom, and Alma placed her broom by the door as if it were a greeter with union benefits. The kettle breathed steadily, a therapist with excellent boundaries. They came as they always do in a small town in pairs, with casseroles, with a story folded inside a question. Pastor Jim carried the hymn of slow in his posture. Jean from the county index brought rosin-dusted fingers and a smile that said, I like filing storms alphabetically. Even Mr. Piccolo from the hardware store sidled in, hat in hand, to ask whether his mother's just-in-case papers were the right kind of just. I opened with thanks, then with nouns. The household gods I keep deed, clause, witness. Here's the headline, I said softly. You can love your family and still require a neutral witness. You can accept soup and refuse signatures. You can keep your roof without apologizing to anyone who wants to move in early. We read Robert's life estate clause out loud like a psalm. Alma on the verbs. Ruth on the parts in parentheses. Pastor Jim nodded as if the punctuation were preaching. Academic phrase of the day, principal, agent problem. The public argument that when one person, the agent, is supposed to act for another, the principal. Incentives can slip. The agent's convenience starts to wear the principal's name tag. In kitchens, it sounds like, don't worry, I'll handle the big stuff. Followed by a trust document where the handler is also the beneficiary. The cure is accountability-neutral witnesses, audited tools, and schedules where every pen knows who owns it. We passed around a sample springing medical POA, the kind that wakes only when 2 physicians say it should, and a 1-page what notaries must bring list-bound journal. Commission number, ID check. 0 pre-filled acknowledgements. Jean explained how indexes really work.
Names matter, he said, tapping the margin. If your deed is filed as Whitmore, E, that's fine. If it's filed as Family Trust, that's Fogg. We prefer weather that doesn't lie. People laughed in the way folks do when a clerk makes law sound like housekeeping. Sable arrived late with a lasagna and a look that had practiced humility on the drive over. Adrian came behind her, quieter than his jacket. I offered them bowls and chairs. I offered Sable the floor. She took a breath. I brought food, she said. And I'm listening. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't performative either. Progress often comes dressed as awkward. Quirky sidebar. Thermal receipts fade because the ink is just heat-sensitive dye on coated paper. Leave one in the sun and the numbers ghost away. If you need a record that survives July dashboards and stubborn rumors, photocopy or scan within a week. The page that tells the truth should not be allergic to light. We worked through questions the way you shell peas steady. Repetitive. Strangely satisfying. Mr. Piccolo asked if a temporary POA could turn permanent while nobody was looking. Anything renewable without review tries to marry you without vows, I said. Add sunsets and audits. A young nurse named Petra, friend of Alma's niece, asked what to do when a patient's adult child arrives with a mobile notary and a voice like a fire drill. Ask for the journal and ID, Ruth said. And if the room feels wrong, make tea. Time is a solvent. I wrote Petra's name down without thinking, later. She would ask about my garage flat. This is how roofs find their next guardians in rooms where soup cools slowly and people talk like lighthouses. Light joke 1. For the tension, I held up a dish towel I'd printed with the life estate clause. Absorbent and legally persuasive, I announced. Laughter loosened shoulders. Even Sable smiled with some teeth showing. Pastor Jim whispered, I'll order 12 for the church kitchen. Halfway through, my phone hummed on the sideboard. Hannah's name. I excused myself and listened while she spoke low and precise. The bar intake office had requested Mr. Calder's notary's journal for audit. Brookside had confirmed in writing that no pre-admission existed in my name, and quietly important. A different family had come forward with a familiar tale, pre-filled temporary forms promising a short bridge over a long river. Your lantern's throwing light, Hannah said. We'll keep it steady. I thanked her and returned to the circle with that news translated into kitchen. Paper is awake. You're not alone. Elder wisdom reflection. Say no with a calendar. Not just a word. No. Not tonight. No. At my lawyer's on Tuesday. No. With a neutral present. A calendar turns protest into policy and gives kind people something to carry besides guilt. You don't owe anyone spontaneity with your signature. When the hour thinned, I closed with the smallest altar I know, a corkboard labeled roof, onto it. 1 pin each, the recorded notice. Hannah's no transfer absent counsel. Jean's index scan. Pastor Jim's sermon title, The Virtue of Slow. Petra's card with night shift scrawled beside her number. These are not weapons, I said. They're windbreaks. We don't fight the whole sky, we keep the soup warm. As people drifted toward coats and compliments. Adrian lingered by the sink and rinsed bowls like a man learning a new liturgy. I read the clause on the towel twice, he said. A little wonder tucked into the confession. It's not a wall, it's a well-tended gate, I answered. Gates make picnics possible. He nodded and dried the bowl until it shone. Sable placed the lasagna on my counter and met my eyes as if approaching a new language. I'm not trustworthy yet, she said, the sentence landing without defense. But I can carry food and keep my hands off your pen. That works, I said. I'll put you on the salad rotation. Low risk, high praise. Light joke too. She snorted despite herself. After the last spoon retired, and Alma's broom signed off for the evening, Ruth and I reset the house. We added Petra's name to a short list titled Help That Is Help. I walked her to the garage flat to show the small kitchen. The south window that misunderstands winter. The extra space where a nurse might sleep between night shifts. It's humble, I said, but it's honest. If you ever need it, it needs you back. Petra ran a hand along the windowsill like you pat a creature you're thinking of adopting. Let me finish my current lease, she said. Then we'll talk. I like roofs with paperwork. Back inside, I found an envelope slid through the mail slot, no name. Just a photocopy of a Brookside intake sheet with my name typed in the prospect line and today's date corrected in pen. Someone had tried to make a ghost walk. I photographed it, forwarded to Hannah, and put the paper under a magnet labeled, "Nice try." 10 minutes later, she replied, already called. The facility confirmed it wasn't theirs, an old blank commandeered for theater. Patterns don't give up quietly, she wrote. They audition with props. I poured that into the teacup where my blood pressure goes to loosen its tie. Light joke 3, whispered to the kettle. We are not the theater district, we're the library. The kettle applauded in steam. Night lowered itself calmly over the shingles. I sat at Robert's desk and wrote down the names of people who had stood between me and a poor outcome. Hannah with cedar in her voice, Jean with rosin on his fingers, Alma with a broom that understands perimeters, Ruth, my hinge, Petra, maybe the future heartbeat in the flat, Adrian and Sable, entering the long, decent work of bringing food before advice. Then I copied one sentence onto a fresh card and pinned it to roof if someone reaches for your pen. They're reaching for your life. Keep the pen. Offer soup. Before bed, I placed 2 spoons and a cardamom pod in the little jar labeled Pens on Leash. Rituals are not magic, they're metronomes. The house popped its old, kind bones. Outside. The street practiced boring. Inside, the air took on that hushed, untroubled quality that tells you both the door and your pulse know what to do if the midnight phone glows again. I turned off the lamp and let the cinnamon linger like a friendly gloss across the dark. Monday carried the soft productivity of a library cart, little wheels. Big order. I woke to a text from Hannah Bar Counsel requested Mr. Calder's conflict log, notary journal under review. Your recorded notice already paid for itself. Title office flagged an attempted information request by a third party and declined. All calm. I poured tea and set 2 bowls on the counter because Petra was coming by after her night shift to look at the garage flat in daylight, which is when roofs tell you who they are.
Before she arrived, Hector installed a better deadbolt and a peephole at a height that respects bifocals. He narrates while he works an old cop's lullaby. Locks don't keep saints out. They keep opportunists honest, he said. Snapping the last plate into place, your hinges sound like they congratulate decisions. The door answered with a polite click, as if it had been waiting to join the policy team. Light joke 1, I told Hector we'd add the door to the soup and glosses roster. It understands boundaries better than most people.
Petra came with coffee and a careful smile. She walked the little flat like a person reading a stethoscope, touching the stove, opening the tiny wardrobe, testing the faucet with a nurse's patience. I sleep between lives, she said. So quiet matters. The south window threw a rectangle on the floor. She stepped into it and closed her eyes. Yes, she said. This is a nap that knows my name. We agreed on a short lease with long kindness month to month, a rate that honored her hours, and rules that favored soup over surprise. She offered first and last in blue ink bills like ceremonial paper. I countered with just the first, because generosity should never be mistaken for strategy. Quirky, sidebar, some smoke detectors chirp at 3 a.m., not because the battery died, but because Cold shrinks voltage, just enough to trigger the reminder. It's a physics prank with perfect timing. The fix is simple, fresh battery. Warmer placement, but the lesson lingers. Alarms love the hour when resolve naps. I moved the hall detector 2 inches from the draft and, feeling clever, rewarded myself with an extra cinnamon stick in the tea. At 10, Hannah arrived with a folder labeled Safeguards, like it had earned capital letters. Today, the boring brilliance, she said. Opening to a checklist. 1. Letter to banks confirming no agent authority exists without a court order. 2. No solicit note to the county recorder to call me if anyone requests certified copies of your deed. 3. Voicemail script on your landline so the next midnight opera has a narrator. She grinned. 4. Neighbor witness roster names and numbers in one place so Alma isn't the whole cavalry. We filled the page like people sewing a row of parsley. Methodical. Domestic. Guaranteed to help something taste better later. Academic phrase of the day. Procedural safeguards the public argument that structures notice. Counsel. Neutral witnesses. Cooling off periods protect rights better than passion does. The safeguard isn't a comment on your character, it's a handrail on a staircase. I like handrails. They let old knees carry groceries and dignity at the same time. We recorded the voicemail together. I spoke slowly, as if reading a bedtime story to my own future. You've reached Elaine Whitmore. All legal and financial matters must go through Hannah Doyle. Attorney, I do not sign at my doorstep. If you are delivering lasagna, you are very welcome. Hannah applauded with 2 fingers on the table. Perfect, she said. The law loves a menu that distinguishes pen from pasta. Adrian texted around lunch. Can I stop by alone at 4? I looked at the calendar, then at my pulse. Then replied, yes. 4 to 4:30. Soup language only. He arrived early with his old high school hoodie under a jacket that tried too hard to be an adult. We sat at the small table that makes truth behave. I've been reading, he said. Surprising me, life estates, homestead exemptions, the difference between helping and handling. He handed me something that changed the temperature of the room, a handwritten note. I consent to respect the recorded life estate and to refrain from any action to transfer or encumber the property without my mother's counsel present. He'd signed with the same careful loops he used the summer he learned cursive. I read it twice, then looked at his face. This isn't legal magic, I said, but it's moral plumbing. He laughed and wiped his eyes with a sleeve that had known better days. I needed a wrench, he said.
Light joke 2. We keep them in the drawer next to lentils.
We walked the yard afterward, the way people do when words have done enough and new air is necessary. He asked about Petra. I told him I was trading quiet for company and safety that pays rent. He nodded, adult finally standing next to the boy. I'll shovel the walk, he said. Consider it my penance and cardio. We agreed on Thursdays, which is also trash day. A coincidence I enjoy more than I pretend. Hannah texted while we were admiring the stubborn hydrangea bar council had scheduled interviews. Mr. Calder's notary had voluntarily suspended commissions pending training. Brookside had flagged their files to reject any admission for me not made through counsel. Your lighthouses are in a row, she wrote. Sturdy, blinking, courteous. Elder wisdom reflection, make your safety boring. People think security is drama sirens. Cameras, declarations. It's not. It's routines with soft edges mail that forwards predictably. Neighbors who wave at the right moments. A voicemail that answers for you after dark. A pen that lives where you can find it without thinking. Glamour exhausts. Boring lasts.
Toward evening. A cream envelope arrived, no return address. My name spelled correctly, which disqualified 3 likely culprits. Inside. A 1-paragraph apology from Sable,
not a masterpiece, but not theater. I treated your roof like a solution to my fear. I'll bring salad and keep my hands off your calendar. Progress measured in produce fine by me. I set it beside Adrian's note under the magnet labeled lanterns. 2 small lights, imperfect, but on. We closed the day with the practical romance that keeps a house marriage alive. Petra moved in a kettle and a plant. Hector dusted my new peephole like it had joined the family. Alma stood on the walk at dusk and tested her broom's echo, 1 sweep for good night, 2 for call me, 3 for call Hannah. I wrote the code on an index card titled Perimeter, taped inside the hall closet where coats learn seasons. Quirky fact, the little notch on most tape dispensers is called a serrated cutting edge. But in the packaging trades, some old-timers call it the truth edge, because it ends the string of sticky half commitments and gives you a clean start. I used the truth edge to label a fresh folder, Safeguards Done, and slipped inside copies of the bank letters, the recorder note, and Adrian's promises. Clean starts deserve clean edges. Before bed, I answered one more call Rio from Halter Creek. Your thank you box started something, she said, audible smile. We made a shelf, quiet hero snacks. Truckers add to it now. Today, someone left a roll of quarters taped to a note for laundromat emergencies. Thought you'd want to know your tide keeps moving. I promised a resupply run and hung up with that washed stone feeling you get when a small, stubborn kindness disobeys gravity. Light joke 3. To stitch the day, I told the kettle we were upgrading from soup and closets to soup and calm locks. The kettle, chair of my domestic standards committee, sang its approval right on pitch. I wrote the last line in the notebook with the pen that knows my hand. We did not build a fortress. We taught the door its manners and gave the street our schedule. Under it, smaller. For the version of me who sometimes misses the boy in the man and the husband in the pencil note, keep the beam steady. Let the rest walk toward it at their chosen speed. The house, a scholar now in procedural safeguards, made its old, kind pops. Outside. Winter practice being a good neighbor. Inside. A nurse boiled water in a new kettle. A son put Thursday on his calendar. And a broom leaned by the door like a quiet badge that says, without sirens, that this roof is spoken for. Tuesday unfolded like a well-behaved napkin square. Clean. Ready to catch any drips the day might try. Petra left early for her shift with a lunch that looked like a responsible cloud. Adrian texted a photo of a shovel leaned against my porch with the caption, Thursday rehearsal. Hannah sent a short note bar interviews scheduled for Friday. Recorder confirmed no new information requests. All steady. Even the radiator clicked in iambic pentameter. As if my house had audited its own rhythm. At 10, I walked to the library with a manila folder titled Lanterns because I wanted to ask the reference desk to set aside a table for next Sunday's soup and clauses overflow. The librarian, Miss Lee, has the disposition of a cat who runs a monastery. We like your curriculum, she said, penciling us onto the calendar. Also, we found an old book on homestead rights, smells like apples and precedent. She wrapped it in brown paper. Due whenever the door says. I carried it home like a bread loaf.
Quirky sidebar. The smell of old books, what people call library, is mostly lignin in the paper, breaking down into vanillin and other friendly aldehydes. In other words, your nose is reading vanilla and history at the same time. If fairness had a scent, it would probably be that warm, slightly sweet, quietly chemical, promising nothing except memory that refuses to sprint. Just before noon, the doorbell tried optimism. I checked the peephole, 2 strangers, one carrying a slim case. The other, a smile I didn't order. Mobile notary. The smiling one announced through the storm door, We're here for Miss Whitmore's signatures. Quick and easy.
The case opened a fraction enough to show a stamp sleeping like a pet. No doorstep signings, I said. Voice at its Sunday setting. All legal matters go through counsel. He tried the word neighborly as if it were a master key. A family member arranged this, he said. You'll feel better getting it done. I will feel better with soup. I answered. Would you like this phone number for my attorney? I held up Hannah's card to the glass. The smile shrugged and turned into a line. The case closed. We can wait, he said. Waiting is free. So is leaving, I said gently, behind them. Alma's broom did an unmistakable two-sweep signal across the street. Hector's curtain bent like a listening ear. I dialed Hannah on speaker. 2 uninvited sous chefs for signatures, I said. Shall I read them the menu? Hannah's cedar voice warmed the hallway. Please inform them politely that any further attempts to solicit signatures at the residence will be considered harassment and referred to bar counsel. Ask for their commission numbers and journal and record. I relayed, calmly. The notary hesitated. Then, perhaps thinking of his journal's recent scrutiny and the sturdiness of our peephole, chose the excellent alternative retreat. We'll reschedule, he muttered. You won't, I said, and closed the conversation with the door. Light joke 1. Whispered to the hinge 5 stars for performance. 2 for script. Elder wisdom reflection. A boundary is kindest when it's early and specific. Not today leaves a shadow. Not at my doorstep, at my lawyer's office, with a neutral present. On Tuesday, at 11, casts light. People who mean you well will step into it. People who don't will squint and go find darker rooms. At 1:30, the phone rang with a number I recognized from the office above the luggage store. Calder. My finger hovered, then pressed. Miss Whitmore, he began. Professional geniality varnished to a shine. Some confusion has arisen. The kind that grows in envelopes, I said. He chuckled as if we shared a small ashtray of sarcasm. Bar counsel wants to chat, he continued. Entirely routine. Like your temporary forms, I said, pleasant as a porch. Mr. Calder, please direct all communications to Miss Doyle. A pause. Of course, he said. And Miss Whitmore? I regret any upset. Upset is a teacup, I said. What you caused was a weather system. Good day. Light joke 2. To myself, after I hung up, meteorology minor acquired. Hannah called back 5 minutes later, half proud, half practical. Nice pivot, she said. And good news. Brookside circulated an internal memo about pre-admission forms staff must verify council contact information when a concerned relative appears with papers. Your case turned into training. Quiet miracles. We thanked the administrative side of mercy, a field that deserves more casseroles, and added, bring a pan to Brookside staff to Sunday's list. Academic phrase of the day, administrative law, less glamorous than courtroom drama. But it's the bloodstream of fairness in hospitals, housing, benefits, licensing. It's where procedures quietly make sure you don't fall through a floor someone forgot to nail. Most protections that save ordinary lives are administrative forms revised, memos issued. Checkboxes moved from optional to required. Notice what changes when the memo changes. That's law humming at kitchen volume. By mid-afternoon, Petra was home, shoes whispering tired, hair saying shift. She accepted a bowl of soup with both hands like a sacrament, and then, per her offer, walked the exterior with Hector to check lights and sightlines. Put a motion sensor here, she suggested, pointing to the side path, and a little bell on this gate. Not to scare you, just to announce. Hector approved. We like announced. They installed both before dusk, moving with the ease of people who enjoy non-emergencies. I stood on the step and felt the comfort that comes from small, audible truth bells and beeps and the creak of a hinge that is firmly on your payroll. Around 4. Adrian arrived with a toolbox and the determination of a man who plans to redeem himself with screws. He fixed the sticky window latch and left behind a piece of blue painter's tape labeled "Report Good." Then he shuffled a little, as if asking to speak without waking dust. "I called Brookside," he said. "I told them any calls about you have to go through Hannah." The woman sounded relieved. "I also called Mr. Calder and told him we're out. For good." The apology had stepped off the page and started doing chores. I hugged him sideways, because head-on can be too much for men on day 2 of learning. "Thank you for learning out loud," I said. "Light joke 3. You're promoted to head of hinges and Thursdays." He saluted with a screwdriver. Dinner time brought quiet pasta and a letter under the door, this time with a return address and no sneaky ink. It was from the county notary board, confirming receipt of our complaint and outlining new training modules, journal, discipline. Pre-printed acknowledgement prohibition, and a case study titled "The Dangers of Temporary." Someone had put our weather into a slide deck. I imagined a room of fidgety notaries staring at a projector while a cheerful instructor said, "Don't be that person," and felt a tenderness for the bureaucracy that rescues people without ever being thanked by name. After dishes. I sat at the desk and drafted something I'd been circling for days, a 1-page house constitution, not because I'm grand, but because houses behave better when their rules are printed. Article 1. I hold a recorded life estate. All transfers require my consent and a neutral witness. Article 2. No doorstep signings. All legal matters through counsel. Article 3. Soup outranks surprise. Article 4. If you're worried, bring your worry at 4 p.m. with a calendar and we'll assign it chores. Article 5. Petra may override any of this in a medical moment, because nurses are the law when time gets small. I posted it on the inside of the pantry door where the flower lives with the pens. Quirky fact: the little plastic ring you tear off a milk jug is called a tamper-evident band. It can't stop a thief, but it tells you if the cap has already had its adventure. I saved one and taped it beside Article 2 as a visual aid. A guest laughed. "House law with props," he said. "Exactly. At 8. The phone offered a small test unknown caller. I let the voicemail earn its keep. A familiar voice, thinner now. Varnish dulled Elaine. "It's Marina. I wanted to say I'm meeting with people tomorrow. I'm rethinking the way I help." I forwarded it to Hannah and continued to not curate other people's redemption arcs. You can cheer for a person and still ask them to stay on the other side of your claws. Later, as Winter practiced being less opinionated, Pastor Jim dropped off a copy of Sunday's sermon draft, The Virtue of Slow. He had written one sentence that I underlined twice and then put on an index card above the sink. Love that hurries begins to resemble fear. Love that keeps a calendar begins to resemble care. I washed 2 mugs in that sentence and felt something unknit and then reknit with better thread. Elder wisdom addendum when peace finally arrives. Don't interrogate it like a suspect. Offer it tea. Give it chores. Hold the door, mind the light, keep the night unremarkable. Let peace be a boring employee. If it gets dramatic, that's not peace. That's nostalgia wearing makeup. Before bed, I walk the perimeter because repetition is faith's polite cousin. Bell soft hello, gate announces, doesn't accuse. Peephole clear. Petra's kettle boiling like a friendly rumor. I wrote 3 lines in my notebook for the version of me who sometimes wakes expecting a midnight whisper. If it arrives with urgency, it can wait until morning. If it arrives with papers, it can wait for counsel. If it arrives with soup, open the door. Then, because the house likes ceremony. I moved 2 items from the corkboard roof to a separate board I labeled Ordinary, Adrian's I consent to respect note, and Sable's apology. They can live in ordinary now. among grocery lists and the calendar for trash day. That is the true victory when what once needed armor now fits alongside eggs and Thursdays. I turned off the lamp. The old door kept its new manners. The radiator clicked like a metronome that had retired from drama. Somewhere beyond the houses, Winter remembered it had no authority over kitchen law. And I let sleep walk toward me unhurried, calendar in hand, ready to work the morning shift with tea. Friday arrived with the quiet of a courthouse hallway, polite shoes. No wasted echoes. Hannah texted at 8 Euro2 bar interviews today. I'll keep you posted. Do the boring things you love. So I did. I folded towels with a righteousness that should be billable, watered the plant that refuses drama, and set out a box labeled Quiet Hero, snacks for our evening run to Halter Creek, because kindness also needs inventory. Petra slept the day shift. Her kettle made the soft punctuation of safety behind the garage wall. Adrian sent a picture of Thursday's shovel leaning like a reliable consonant against my steps. Underneath, he'd written, "Head of hinges reporting for duty." I replied with a thumbs up and a soup emoji because some reconciliations must be measured in emojis and weathered chores before you call them anything bigger. At 10, the doorbell tried optimism again. Peephole, a single woman with a clipboard and the nervous smile of a person who doesn't yet know if she's the surprise or the apology. "Good morning," she said through the storm door. "I'm from Brookside. I wanted to personally apologize for any overenthusiasm." She held up an official memo, new intake rules. Bolded phrases verify council contact, no doorstep forms. Cooling off period. "We're retraining," she said. Cheeks honest. "You were right." I opened the wood door the way one opens for a decent sentence. "Thank you," I said. "Would you take some cookies for your staff?" Her relief made the hallway warmer. She left with a tin and a tighter policy. I wrote "Administrative Mercy" on an index card and pinned it to roof, because not all victories wear capes. Some wear clipboards and sensible shoes. Quirky sidebar. The red flag on a mailbox, so the carrier knows you've left outgoing mail, wasn't required by law. It was popularized by manufacturers who realized bright levers reduced missed pickups. Now we think flags are inherent to mailboxes. That's how good safeguards work. Practice becomes culture. And culture feels like nature. Raise the flag, get the result. It's not romance, it's reliable friction. Hannah called at 11 from a bench that sounded like it had seen better upholstery. Bar counsel finished with the notary. She reported. Commission suspended pending training. Pre-printed acknowledgments labeled serious deviation. Mr. Calder's interview was educational. He's agreed to a remedial course on conflicts and elder transactions. She lowered her voice. And another family recognized the pattern and walked away from a temporary signing this morning. Your lantern is working. I sat down at the kitchen table and let that sentence soften my bones. Our boring little light had ricocheted into someone else's afternoon and said, gently, not today. Academic phrase of the day, chain of custody, the public argument that for an item of evidence to keep its credibility, you must be able to account for who held it, when, and how it was protected from tampering. Kitchens have their version: who had the keys, who touched the folder, who brought a notary without a journal. We restored our own chain, not with dramatics, but with time-stamped soup and a voicemail that answers for us after dark. Just after noon. Sable texted a photo, a gleaming glass bowl of salad with the caption, "Rotation assignment delivered. Hands off your calendar. Progress. In greens and humility." 10 minutes later, she sent another applied for a part-time course, Aging and the Law, at the community college. It seemed appropriate. I surprised myself by smiling with uncomplicated kindness. She had chosen a better map. "Bring your questions Sunday," I wrote. "There will be cinnamon." She hearted it. And this time, it didn't look like teeth. I spent the early afternoon at the library with Miss Lee. arranging extra chairs and a sign that said, "Soup and Claus's Estate Literacy for Ordinary People." She slid a book across the desk. "Homestead Rights. 1978, she said. "It smells like apple peels and precedent." We laughed softly. She added a suggestion box. "Sometimes shame has good questions," she said. "We'll let it write." Back home, Petra emerged from sleep like a cat who'd negotiated a treaty with the sun. We tested the gate bell, hello, the motion sensor, polite, and the peephole, clear. Hector stopped by to bless the hardware with a retired cop's benediction. "You've built a perimeter out of calendars and casseroles," he said. "It's my favorite kind." Light joke one, I told him we were minting a new badge, Soup Sheriff. He tapped the brim of an imaginary hat and declined a salary. Hannah's 3 p.m. text read like a small hymn, bar interviews concluded, follow-up recommended, administrative memo to notary community pending. Under it. A second Calder sent a written apology that I will keep in a file labeled Maps Improved. I printed the message and slid it behind the magnet that says Lanterns. Not to gloat, to remember that systems can learn when you give them something worth learning. By late afternoon, Adrian arrived to practice his newly invented Thursday, even though it wasn't shovel. Checks, hinges, weather report. He asked if he could switch out the porch light for an LED that respects old eyes without interrogating them. As long as it doesn't make the house feel like a waiting room, I said. He chose a bulb with discretion. The porch learned to glow like a good sentence clear, not loud. He lingered in the kitchen while Petra tied her shoes. "I keep finding screws in my pockets," he said wryly. "Penance." Or the house flirting, light joke 2. The house is a shameless flirt with a thing for men who respect hinges. He laughed. Properly this time, the sound that means healing has rented a chair. We took the evening drive to Halter Creek with a shoebox of cookies and rolls of quarters taped to little notes for laundromat emergencies. Rio clapped her hands. Chet blushed. Again. Like a man who choreographs his heroism for the smallest audience, a cold stranger. A hot drink. A good sleep afterward. We labeled the shelf Quiet Hero Snacks in my best teacher handwriting and left the quarters where gratitude gets used. On the way home, the sky practiced subtlety pearl gray with a promise it could keep. I told Petra about the Sunday program. She promised to drop a flyer at the hospital break room. "Nurses love clauses," she said. "We chart for a living. We like words that behave." I thought of all the sentences that had misbehaved in the last month, whispers about confusion. Urgent invitations to sign, and felt a small, satisfied peace settle into the car's upholstery. We had taught our words better manners. Elder wisdom reflection. When people say family first, make sure they mean family dignity first, not family convenience first. Dignity has schedules. Convenience prefers corridors with no witnesses. Choose dignity. It tastes slower, but it digests better. Back home. I opened the pantry and read the House Constitution out loud just to keep the cadence familiar. Article 1 still sat there like a patient door I hold a recorded life estate. Article 2 still handed me the leash for pens. Article 3 still ranked soups over surprises in the firmest font kindness allows. I taped a new token beside them, a clipped milk jug ring, labeled Tamper Evident, because metaphors deserve display cases, too. At 7, Pastor Jim dropped by to test his sermon on my kitchen acoustics. "The virtue of slow," he read, "is not about delay for its own sake. It's about the kind of attention that turns love into care." He looked up. "Too much, just right," I said. Add one line, "Calendars make kindness durable." He wrote it down and stole a cookie with the righteousness of clergy. Just before bed, the phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Marina. Her voice had shed its gloss. What remained sounded like a person on a porch without a script. "Elaine," she said. I'm meeting with bar council next week. I wanted to say I'm stepping away from private deals. I thought I was helping. I was convenient. I let the silence be a chair and not a courtroom. I hope your next map is kinder, I said. You don't need my forgiveness to choose it. She breathed out, the old varnish cracking. Thank you, she said, and hung up before anyone could perform. Light joke 3. To send the day to bed without sharp corners, I told the kettle we were drafting an official town motto in this jurisdiction. Soup beats signatures. The kettle approved, then insisted we add. Bring your worry at 4 p.m. The kettle is very process-oriented. I wrote 3 small lines for 3 a.m., that loyal, curious hour on an index card, and tucked it under the sugar jar. Flags up, forms down, lanterns on. If it's urgent, it needs a calendar. If it's kind, it can wait for tea. Then I stood at the door that used to flirt with betrayals and listened to its new manners. Click. Settled. The radiator kept time like an old musician who has finally been paid. Petra's lamp glowed through the garage window. Steady as a lighthouse with excellent bedside manners. The street performed boring with professional pride. And my pulse dear. Sometimes dramatic bureaucrat that it is filed the day under ordinary, which is where victory likes to live when it's done auditioning. Sunday's program filled the library like a friendly tide folding chairs. Crockpots that argued softly about cumin, and a half moon of faces that had learned to trust nouns. Miss Lee arranged our table of handouts beneath a sign that read, Soup and Claus's Estate Literacy for Ordinary People. And I taped the house constitution to the end cap where the large print dictionaries live. Petra straightened the flyers with a nurse's sympathy. Adrian tested the projector like a man on good terms with electricity. Sable stood near the salad bowl and, to her credit, let the bowl do the talking. We opened with gratitude and a recap of the boring miracles Brookside's new intake memo, the notary board's training module, the recorder's no solicit flag. Administrative mercy, I said, doesn't tug at headlines, but it keeps roofs honest. People nodded. We read samples aloud, life estate, springing power. Witness language until strangers could say the sentences without looking down. Academic phrase of the day. Norm cascade the public argument that once a critical mass adopts a safeguard, it spreads fast. Not by law alone, but by expectations. One church prints no doorstep signings on bulletin boards. A clinic adds council verification to its checklist. Neighbors start asking, who's your neutral? The point isn't force, it's gravity. We're not inventing decency so much as turning it on. We added a quirky sidebar because rooms remember better when they laugh. A choir is 25 sheets of paper. Old stationers bound their scraps that way, so when Jean mutters, "Give me a choir of that," he's not making up units, he's flirting with history. Light joke 1. I confess that if you bring me a choir and a pot of tea, I will notarize your grocery list with compliments, but not with a stamp. After Q&A. Miss Lee wheeled out a card of take and keep folders we'd assembled tabs. Sample letters, a blank witness statement, and a printed card that said, "The pen is yours. Offer soup." I watched hands take them the way people take umbrellas on a sure forecast. Sable raised her hand. "May I say something?" she asked, voice level. I let the room answer. Heads nodded. "I thought speed was kindness," she said. "Looking at nobody and everybody. I was wrong. I'll be the salad person for a while." She leaned into the joke and removed the sting. The room accepted both. Hannah arrived near the end with good paper bar counsel's follow-up recommendations. Notary training dates. A letter from Brookside's administrator thanking community partners for the nudge toward safer procedures. We clapped, not because bureaucracy is adorable, but because somebody had to give it a standing ovation once. We closed by pinning a new index card to the corkboard Quiet Hero Snacks shelf, now permanent, at Halter Creek. Rio had texted a photo that morning. The quarters were replenished. A small note in block letters read, "You kept a person whole." Chet had drawn a smiley face with forearms. Light joke too. I proposed a medal order of the 2:39 a.m. Coco then promised not to make anyone wear it to work. Back home, the house wore its competence without bragging. The gate bell chimed just once, a neighbor returning a casserole dish with that universal inscription, "No rush." Petra napped like someone who trusts the furniture. Adrian replaced the porch light with the courtesy of a man who has learned that brightness and glare are not the same species. Sable dropped off a binder labeled Class Notes Aging and the Law and a tin of lemon bars that apologized appropriately. Elder wisdom reflection. When the crisis ends, don't retire your rituals. Promote them. Keep the inbox rules, the witness roster, the soup calendar. Routines are a roof's immune system. You don't scold your hand washing after the flu passes. You make it a hymn. We did one last errand before the day declared itself satisfied. I printed a one-page thanks for the beam letter and slid small copies into 3 envelopes to Hannah. For being Cedar, to Jean, for Rawson and Stamps, to Brookside's admin, for putting humility into a memo. I tucked a 4th into the Quiet Hero box shelf at Halter Creek and added a roll of quarters in Robert's name. For laundromat emergencies, I wrote, because emergency is just a long word for someone else's midnight knock. Quirky sidebar note 2, because the day requested dessert, the tiny raised dots along some check papers are called security screens. Rub a soft pencil across them and the word void appears like a shy ghost. I keep one such check near the pens as a conversation piece. Light joke 3 void is my second favorite 4-letter word. I told Pastor Jim. He declined to guess the first and ate a cookie to avoid scandal. As dusk unbuttoned itself, Petra strung a low line of warm lights across the garage window. "For morale," she said. "For wayfinding," I answered. Adrian texted. Thursdays confirmed also shoveling champion. Self-awarded. Sable sent a photo of her syllabus with the caption "Learning Out Loud." Hannah forwarded a message from the notary board. "Thank you for helping us teach the difference between speed and service." I went to the pantry and read the House Constitution out loud. One last time for this season, letting its articles become an unshowy lullaby. Then I added a modest Article 6 with a pen that knows its owner if a stranger at your door says, "This will be quick. The soup is not ready. Ask them to sit or send them away, but do not fetch a pen." We ended the night not with speeches but with linens. Ruth ironed the good napkins. I folded the dish towels with the Life Estate cloths stitched in friendly font. Petra taped a schedule to the fridge night shifts. Thursday shovels, soup and clauses next date. Our signatures were not required. That was the point and the prize. Before sleep, I stood at the blue door and listened to its new manners click. Patience. The street performed boring like a profession. The gate bell made one polite syllable when Alma waved her broom goodnight. I wrote one last line in the notebook that started the week I overheard the plotted after she signs the house and has carried me through each hinge we kept the pen. And we learned to love calendars. Then I closed the cover, set the kettle, and walked toward a bed with generous sheets, a room with modest ambition, and a roof that knows exactly whose name to answer to when morning clears its throat. The rooms are quieter now, not the brittle quiet of a held breath, but the soft, useful quiet of a kitchen that has already decided where everything goes. The pen in its jar with a leash, the binder on its shelf with a label, the kettle rehearsing patience, the door remembering its one good trick, click. We walked from a midnight whisper after she signs the house into a daylight that did not blink, carrying ordinary tools like lanterns across in blue ink, a neutral chair, a voicemail that knew how to narrate, a calendar that could tell the difference between urgency and care. We learned that you can keep your roof with kindness and your kindness with witnesses. That soup is not a metaphor, but a policy. That neighbors with brooms and nurses with keys are the sort of law that wears cardigans and shows up on time. What remains is smaller and better. A library cart of a day that moves the right papers to the right desk. A porch light that glows like a clear sentence. A son who fixes hinges on Thursdays. A daughter-in-law who brings salad and learns out loud. A notary who keeps a bound journal because the state asked gently and the community clapped when it mattered. A rest stop with a shelf for quiet hero snacks and a roll of quarters taped to a prayer. We did not win by hurrying, we won by slowing, by reading the verb before the signature, by saying no with dates and yes with soup. And now the house exhales old bones, kind pops, and the street performs that most beautiful of civic duties, boring. So breathe in, 4 slow counts, and breathe out, 6 softer ones. And let the beam hold you while sleep arrives with its own clipboard and a promise to keep watch till morning.